tell us your name?
And we're going to be talking about phantom phone calls today. That's the rest of the show, phantom phone calls. All right. And what I define phantom phone calls is number one, phone calls that are received or answered when there's no one there, or there's a strange voice, or just some kind of noise on the other end of the phone call, or phone rings when it shouldn't be able to. We've got a couple of those stories. Andrew's got one that she's going to share in a little bit. And we're going to read one from one of our ETs, Tommy, where the phone should not be ringing. These are technically landline phones that most people do not have today, but they're not wired into anything, not connected in any way, but they still ring. My number three is a combination of those two. Because I have heard instances where people actually answer the phone where it should not be ringing, and there was something there. All right. And the fourth thing that we're going to have to actually delve into in a later episode, when we hope probably we'll have to bring back phantom phone calls, is what the internet describes as, in mobile wireless communication, phantom dialing is a term used to pre-programmed auto dial number in their cellular phone keypad and unintentionally initiates a phone call. In other words, a butt dial. You've all had that happen. You've all heard of that happening. Now, the internet defines that as phantom dialing. I have heard of situations where there was an ambiguously unintentional or intentional, however you want to say it, where someone accidentally dialed someone else and the other person answers the call and was either needing to speak to that person or was thinking about that person, and there was some kind of connection in the ether there somehow. So we're going to dig into that one too, because to me that's kind of freaky, that's kind of phantom. But I just wanted to share the reason I got the idea for this show is because where I work, I was given a company phone, sits on my desk next to my workstation. And I don't know the connection here, but before they gave me a headset and I was actually having to physically reach over and pick up the phone, is when I got most of these weird phone calls. I started getting what I call these phantom phone calls, and I'd gotten several of them, and then I finally said, well, I've got to document this somehow. So when I would get one, I would put it on when I realized what it was. After you say hello a couple of times, there's nobody there, and you hear all this weird stuff. I would put it on speakerphone, pull out my phone, just do a quick recording of, 8, 10, 12 seconds, just enough to get the flavor of it. And so what I've done is I've edited those together, and we're going to play some of those today. Now, these are actual phone calls that I received at work, and where nobody was on the line. That's what I was mentioning in the definition. Now, I blurred the images because this was my work phone, okay? I'm trying to be respectful because it would show the actual screen on the phone with other employees' names. So all that's blurred out to be respectful to them because of the type of show we are. Some of them may not appreciate being on this type of show. And you may hear some background voices, and those are just the other employees in the room while I was at work. Now, most of these are recognizable. I'm going to play these in 3 stages. The first stage, and then we'll talk about some others, then we'll come back to my phantom phone calls. The first stage are just, why is this on the phone kind of stuff? Why am I getting a phone call with this kind of stuff? So just judge for yourself. We'll get to the creepy ones later. Let's see what you think about this. Hmm?
I had trouble hearing it.
Well, turn it up.
I did.
All right, we'll go. I mean, could you hear any of it?
It sounded like a train.
Yeah.
I could hear a train. That's odd.
Why would I be getting a phone call from a train? You know,
is there anything like that around you? Like
no.
Are there any older railroad tracks, like unused, abandoned?
No.
None?
And that's another thing I didn't mention. These calls are from different numbers. All the phone numbers are actually different for each of these phone calls. And some of them actually say unknown. Some of them have no caller ID. Some of them will have a weird name. So, but here's the next one.
Motorbike?
That one kind of sounded like some kind of transmission.
I thought chainsaws. Like chainsaws.
I was thinking dirt bikes. I was thinking dirt bikes.
But did you ever call any of these numbers back?
Good question. Yes. Nobody answered. Or it would say that the line is no longer in existence, or it would just do the beeping thing. Yeah, these are phantom phone calls, folks. All right, here's the next one. You may have to turn this one up a little bit. I heard an airplane flying.
I thought it seemed like someone using a hairdryer.
Possibly. All right, last one in this.
I heard road noise.
What?
I heard road noise. Like somebody was driving with the windows down?
Yeah, like when it's raining.
Right.
Okay, that's a possibility too, because it sounded to me like an airplane, but now that you mention that, it does sound like that. All right, last one for this segment.
Horses.
That sounded like a horse cart.
Definitely. Definitely somebody riding a horse.
Or it could be coconut shells like Monty Python. No.
Perfect. Yes, of course. It could be. When they were jingling a little bit. Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll get back to some more of those in a minute. But those are just, I mean, I'm still getting them, and I got one just last week. I mean, it doesn't happen as much for some reason now that I have the headset. I don't know why, but I'll still have some, be on my voicemail the next morning when I get to work. So
I just moved into a new place, and it's so weird. There are no phone jacks in the whole place. Never even built into this place.
Wow.
So AT&T came and installed my internet, and they had to go through the wall and stuff. But I was going through my tub of old stuff, and I found my old phone and receiver. Like, it was a wireless, but connected to a wall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It had a handset, and I put it in my bathroom and just left it there, thinking of you. It just sits there on the back of the toilet in case someone needs to call.
There you go, just in case. All right.
Have you ever heard of a spoof card?
That sounds familiar.
So I just went ahead and like Googled real quick, like the definition of it. My husband got his hands on one about 10 years ago and had a heyday with it. Prank calling my poor mother. But well, what it can do is it offers you a chance to change what someone else sees on the caller ID.
Right.
And it can also change your voice. It can mask your voice. So you can put any number in. You can make a call, like the caller ID show up as their phone number or unknown or a bunch of zeros. And then when you talk, it will mask your voice. And it had like a higher octave or a lower octave.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe somebody's just calling from a spoof card just because they have nothing better to do. But still, the odd things, like they're like sending you calls of all kinds of different ways of transportation. So
well, we're going to get to some different ones here in a minute. Okay. I just grouped the transportation ones together first. There's more weird ones. All right. Okay. Tommy couldn't be with us today. You know, Tommy Pratt's in Tennessee, and he has the Haunted Stories of Decatur County Facebook group. And he's also one of our ETs. But he wrote this and wanted us to share it. He said, mine's not a voice phone call, but here's what I have. I still have the old wall phone that my mom and dad used here for years. We have disconnected it from the phone line, but left it hanging in the kitchen just as they had it. I can recall 3 times since my mom's passing in January of 2015, Dad passed on Christmas Eve of 07, that the phone would ring and there would be a dial tone when none of us would answer it, all the while knowing that the line to that phone has been completely removed from the phone repair access box out on the carport. Wow. So he's gotten phone calls on a line that's disconnected. Huh?
It's hard to debunk that one.
Yeah. Especially when they're sitting there saying, wait a minute. And you'll hear Andrew's got a similar one coming up in a little bit. Now, we did some research and we found some other instances of that, of similar phantom phone calls. And Christine's going to read a couple of them for us here from, I don't know if this is liveabout.com or liveabout.com. Do y'all know? Anyway, I found these in some of my research, a couple of quick stories that are just creepy. Go ahead, Christine.
Okay, do you want me to say who it was first?
Yeah, good idea.
Okay, this is from Bonnie O. And she said, 3 years ago, my mother passed away. We were very close, and I miss her daily. Last Christmas evening, I went to bed and woke up to the phone ringing. I answered it, and a voice that was very familiar to me said, "Hello there." It was my mother's voice.
Wow.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
The line had a static noise, and the sound cut in and out. I said, "This can't be you, Mom. You're dead." She said, "Oh, come now." She sounded a bit agitated, and then we were cut off. My 16-year-old daughter was sleeping in the next room and also heard the phone ring. That
We're cutting out.
it was my mother, had a Norwegian accent. It was her. Again, that was from Bonnie O.
Wow.
And the next one from Mary B.
Your connection was cutting out there.
From Mary B. says, one of my clients.
It was cutting out there for a second, right at the last.
Sorry.
What was that about the 16-year-old daughter? Christine, are you still with us? Are you still with us?
It says, my 16-year-old daughter was sleeping in the next room and also heard the phone ring that night. I know it was my mother's voice. She has a...
Nope. That was good.
I'm here.
All right. Yeah, your internet's getting splotchy up there in Opelika. All right.
I can go inside if I need to.
No. All right, let's go on to the next story.
Okay. Mary B. She writes, one of my clients related this story to me a few years ago. At the time, she worked for the Department of Social Services, and one of the services she offered was checked for emergency expenses. She had issued a check for $100 to one of her clients for utilities and was about to close the file when her phone rang. On the line was a woman to whom the check was issued. The woman sounded vague and distracted, but clearly said, I won't be needing that $100 after all. My client made a note of it and went on with her work. That evening at home, she was reading the newspaper when she saw the obituary of the woman she had talked with on the phone. She had died the previous day. Again, that was from Mary B.
Whoa. Wow. Can you imagine? Talking to somebody on the phone and then you read their obit, that's just kind of creepy. That'll put a chill up your spine.
It's really, I mean, I thought I because I got to read the stories before this, and I thought they were really fascinating.
That would definitely be
yeah,
something.
and I think it's really interesting because I came across it's called Soaring Spirits International Widowed Village, and it's just a forum that's online, and on there, like back in July of 2019, a thread was started about phantom phone calls from these wives' husbands.
Wow.
Or just different occurrences that they had that they're like, this is just too coincidental.
Yeah.
It's just too strange. I mean, this phone, it rang, and I know I heard him say my name, or just different things. I went through it. It was very private, so I didn't want to I don't want to divulge a lot, but you can definitely check it out, anybody that watches. But it was very interesting that these women, and it went all the way until September of 2019, these just different accounts of, oh yeah, I had that happen. Oh yeah, about 6 months later or 6 weeks later, he didn't wait long to let me know that he had crossed over. And it was just really
I've heard of I've heard of that before. I mean, it's something that's almost a regular occurrence. Yeah, save the link for that, and after the show, let's put it in the comments. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to get back to some more of my weird phone calls now. All right. Again, it may have been a spoof card. It may have been somebody. I mean, like I said, you would think, these calls started back in November, and I'm only playing 14 or 15 of them for you today. Okay, so you would think if it was a practical joke, somebody would have let me in on it by now. But here's the next one. Let me see what you think. Just some random crowd of people?
I thought I heard a little bit of music too.
Could be.
Like a ballroom kind of situation.
restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're a crowd of people. You ever watched the movie Sneakers? With Robert Redford, Dan Aykroyd, Sidney Poitier, River Phoenix. Oh God, it's one of my all-time favorite movies. And Robert Redford's character had been kidnapped and then released, and so they were all trying to figure out where he had gone to, and so they were going through the sequences, and he was thinking about what he heard, and that's all he was going by was what he had heard while he was kidnapped in the trunk of this car. And then at the end of it, he said, what do you remember next? And he said, I remember a cocktail party. And they said, a cocktail party? What are you talking about, a cocktail party? And the blind guy, it's David Strathairn, he's like, oh, I know. And he told them where to go, and they turn down the next street, and they get out, and there's a flock of flamingos. And it sounded just like a crowd of folks talking and, carrying on at a cocktail party.
Interesting.
That's what this reminded me of. And he told David Strathairn's character told Robert Redford, he says, "You're now officially a blind person." So, all right, let's see. Okay, yeah, here's the next one.
Someone in nice shoes.
Yeah.
Well, what's weird about this one, which is actually two clips, because I've gotten that one on two different occasions, and I just put them together because they were similar. They weren't exactly the same, but they were similar. When I told my story in our Personnel Paranormal show, I talked about hearing footsteps in the barn. That's exactly what it sounded like to me. You know, when I heard this phone call, I was like, wow, that's what I heard way back when in the barn. And then heard it outside where there wasn't any boards and it wasn't flooring, but I heard footsteps. So, all right, here's the next one. This is kind of cool.
Typing?
That's what it sounds like to me, or what they call today keyboarding.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounded kind of like, to me, like, you know, when you're on an old ship and all that creaking,
There's that too,
that's
yeah.
kind of what it sounded like to me. That incessant sound.
Could be.
Creaking boat.
That too. All right, two more in this section. This one's kind of fun. Yeah, that one's. You know, you answer the phone and you hear this, and you're like, "Hello, hello." You know, it's kind of fun, but at the same time, you're like, "Why am I getting these calls?"
Where is this noise coming from?
Yeah. So at least he didn't try to, you know, tell me about my vehicle's extended warranty. So.
Yeah.
All right. Last one in this section.
Hey, okay, Andrew?
I think it's a day in the life of some guy.
Filling the bottle sounded to me like. But,
It was a little creepy, I'll be honest. And then at the end, it just made me giggle. But it sounds, I mean, it sounds like he's walking through a basement or something, like a well, sewer.
That's just kind of weird, you know. Why am I getting these freaky phone calls? And let's see, these aren't even it's creepy when you stop to think about it, you know, who be calling and doing this kind of stuff. But, you know, there's some creepy ones later. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Well, right now, we're going to go on to Beth White's experience. And she's one of our ETs. And we've got a little short video clip we're going to share of hers in just a minute. And Dagny's going to lead up to that video here.
So, Beth said that. So this was at her mom's house before we sold it. This is the same house where I used to see Fred. Forgot to mention that's what I used to call him.
Yeah, remember in our Personnel Paranormal show, she talked about that guy she saw growing up.
The man that got into the refrigerator all the time.
Exactly. So, she's letting us know here that she named him Fred.
She gave him a name.
Yeah.
The neighbor across the street, Anita, was with me behind the camera. She called me a couple of times saying there was someone at the house where there should not have been. I did debunk it being an actual human. She kept seeing someone standing or walking past the kitchen window.
Okay. We'll play the video of hers where she was doing some paranormal investigation, and it includes a phantom phone call. You'll see what we're talking about here in a second. But then she came back and sent us more information after we got the video. So Dagny's going to get into that after we see this short video.
Go over where he used to stand. Okay, now's your chance. You gotta talk to me. Of course, somebody's calling me. Hello? Hello? That was weird. Okay, talk on this, not my phone. Oh, now you're gonna make the light come on. It actually said no caller ID. That is weird.
Wow.
That's strange.
Cool, huh? We're having trouble with Christine today. What's going on? She's trying to get back in. All right, Dagny, what else does Beth have to say?
She said, Anita would call me and tell me it looked like someone was at my mom's house after my mom passed away. I went the first time and got a really weird feeling when I was there. She stayed on the phone with me while I went inside and checked. I walked back and forth in front of the window to see if it was a person she was seeing. She said, no, that wasn't what she saw. It was shorter and did not cast a shadow like I did. She could definitely tell I was human and walking back and forth in front of the window. I went out to my truck and Anita, still on the phone, began telling me about some of the things she had seen. She had not been told about my ghostly experiences. She said her daughter and her boyfriend were sitting on their front porch when they saw what looked like someone in the house and in the yard. She walked to the end of her driveway to the fence to get a better look. She said a black shape could be seen in the yard, and then it came at her. She freaked out and ran back to her house. I then began to tell her about the experiences I had. She said there had been several times she and another neighbor had seen things over there. So I decided I needed to do some ghost hunting before we let the place go. The video you watched shows part of that hunt. That is in the kitchen, and that is the window they were seeing something in. I'm standing next to where the refrigerator was. In the first video, you can hear my phone ring. I think Anita stopped filming thinking I was getting a call, but when I saw unknown, she started filming again. I held the phone up to show her the unknown caller. No one said anything, and there was no noise on the other end. It was a very strange coincidence that it would happen just as I'm telling Fred to talk with me and the other entity to speak with me. Anita's run-in with the entity in the front yard really baffled me. I never felt any malice or uncomfortable as far as Fred was concerned. So I'm wondering if after the humans moved out, if something else didn't move in. Or maybe he was pissed that we were leaving. I had done some recording before this and told him it was one of the last few times I would be there. Then all the sightings happened. I told him he couldn't come with me though. One of the other neighbors said she was at Anita's and saw what looked like a short woman standing at the kitchen window, which could have been my mom. She would stand at the kitchen window and keep an eye on the neighborhood. She didn't die there, but she always wanted to go back home, so she may have. I told her later in the video to go and be with my dad, who died in 2001. Mom died in 2018, and the video was filmed in 2019.
Wow. Wow. That was kind of, who knows?
And
Yeah.
then to get a phone call while you're there to investigate.
Yeah. You know, she's sitting there, can you talk to me? And her phone rings.
Tried.
Yeah. And she says, all right, not on my phone. All right. Well, I wish Beth was here to tell her own story, but she had family visiting, and so I understand that. So we're going to go to Andrea's story now of her phantom phone call.
It's not really anything big. It's just more of an experience of how did that happen. So my grandmother passed away. She had a stroke on Thanksgiving Day in 2009. And we were at a family dinner. And I mean, honestly, she went from one party to another. If you had to write your story, yeah, it was a nice, in a sense for her, it was a good way to go. She lived in an old Belmont house, and in our area, my neck of the woods, Belmont is one of the older little districts of Dayton, and it's of the Omar district. And she lived in a house that was one of the larger ones in Belmont, and it was one of the bigger ones. She was the second owner. And she lived there from the time my mom was 5, 6. She lived there forever. And so as long as I knew her, she lived there. And so she lost a son there. My mom lost one of her brothers when he was 12. He drowned. My grandpa died in 94. The house always creaked, always made sounds. You thought you would hear somebody walking upstairs. So when my grandma didn't come home because she passed away, my mom and I and other family members had to clean and just take care of it and get it prepared to sell. And she had installed, not too long after my grandfather had died, my grandma had a Brinks home security system installed, because just like any inner city place, it started to decline. The neighborhood did, and she was living by herself. Well, she only kept it for about a year or two because she just couldn't quite figure it out, and she was always triggering it. So we had it canceled for her, cut the wires, and never thought of it again until she passed away. So we thought it'd be good to set up the alarm part so that if a door opened, it would buzz, or if a window was opened, it would buzz, scare somebody away, not really alert the authorities. I have a cousin who is a certified electrician, and my dad, who is a jack of all trades, master of none. And so actually he's a master of many, and my husband. So it was my cousin, my dad, my husband, my mom, and at the time, my 5-year-old, who's now 16, little girl, and we went to grandma's, and us girls decided to just go through photographs and try to sort out who's who and what photos go to who. And the guys went down into the basement and fiddled around with the security system, and wires were cut everywhere. I had an uncle that I think just kind of decided to take it upon himself to take it apart and dismantle it through the years. So they decided to go to the local handyman, and it's dark, it's nighttime, and they said, we're going to go and try to find this part, this piece that we can maybe hook it together. Real quick backstory, I apologize. We had her phones disconnected. She's not living there. Nobody's there. We had the phones disconnected. She died in November, Thanksgiving. We had them disconnected in December. It's January. I had gone in after they were disconnected to pick up the phone and make sure they were dead. You know, no pun intended. There was nothing there. So the guys left. It's now mom and my daughter and I. And the house got dark. I don't know how to explain it. It got heavy. And we were originally upstairs going through pictures. We didn't want to go upstairs. We didn't want to go into the living room.
It wasn't a physical.
It was a feeling.
Dimming. It was more an emotional thing.
Yeah, it was. It doesn't take a lot. I mean, my mom and I don't scare easy. We're kind of ones that would maybe go and check out what that noise is in the basement. So we definitely weren't going to be ran out, especially out of grandma's house. But it definitely gave us both a sense of we weren't welcome there. You know, like we should have left with the guys. So we hung out in my grandma's kitchen and waited for them to come back. We were like, well, we're not leaving, but we're not going upstairs. So, so we stayed downstairs with my daughter and just sat at the table and just talked, you know. I can't remember what the conversation was about, but my grandma had 3 phones in the house. She had one in the kitchen, one in the living room, and one upstairs in her bedroom. In the middle of us talking, the phone in the kitchen rang. And I jumped. I was answering that phone. I wanted to hear who it was. I knew it was grandma. And my mom screamed my name. She was like, Andrea. And I was like, stop, you know, you never stop being a little kid sometimes. I stopped dead in my tracks. And the phone rang again. And this time my mom was softer about it. And she was like, Andrea, don't. And she was scared, you know. So I sat back down, and that time the phone rang a third time. And I just kind of looked at her, and that was it. I later went and picked up the phone, and there was nothing there. My daughter, who was 5, she looked at me and she's like, I am so glad you didn't answer the phone. You know, I don't know what they thought was on the other line. I kind of figure it was grandma, maybe. But when the guys showed back up, we told them what happened and we left. We didn't want to stay any longer. So after that, for a while, when we would go back to my grandma's house, we would go during the day and get done what we needed done, you know. And it really, honestly, it wasn't until we cleared out all of her belongings that the house lifted. It was really heavy after that. We got rid of her stuff, and it was just a house after that. Right. So that's my experience, was a phone that rang that shouldn't have rang. None of the other phones in the house rang, just the kitchen phone. The wires to the home security system was broke. There was no line connection, no landline connection. Wow. That phone shouldn't have rang once, let alone 3 times. Wow. But that's my story. Sorry.
I'd kick myself for not answering. No offense.
I want to know. I brought it up to my mom, and I was like, do you remember that? She's like, yeah, I'm so glad you didn't answer that phone. I'm just like, I don't want to risk it. I think it would have been an interesting thing to hear on the other line, you know.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just thinking about the story earlier.
I can't really add anything else into it other than I kind of wish I did answer, but
yeah. True.
But I didn't, and that was my phantom phone call experience. I mean, the phone shouldn't have rang at all, and it did.
And it did
3 times.
Well, that's one of my definitions of a phantom phone call. And again, that harkens back to my definition of the paranormal experience, you know, that the only true and irrefutable evidence of the paranormal is personal experience. You were there. Tommy heard the same thing, the phone ringing, that it shouldn't have. There was no reason for it to ring. And, we're possibly dealing with some of that nowadays with, cell phones. It could still
I
be
wonder.
happening, and that may be, if we find some stuff, maybe we can go back into that on the next Phantom Phone Call show. All right, we were going to read a story from a famous author, but I'm going to skip that for time so that we can get on to the rest of this. But I wanted to bring in some more of my calls and let you hear. This is where they started getting creepy. Now, this didn't happen to me in a sequence of events. Okay, these were all random, and I never knew what I was going to get. I mean, I could go back in and look at the timestamp data on each of the videos, but that's not the point here. They would come at random intervals and that kind of thing. But what I did when I was going through these was made a collection of, the more benign ones. And then I got them a little more creepy. And then these are a little more on the creepy side. See what you think about this. Any thoughts?
It sounded like static to me.
Static. I mean, to me, it sounded like a fire burning a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, I can hear that.
Yeah, that was just kind of odd to me that I'd be getting that kind of phone call. All right, here's the next one.
I totally hear
Heavy
dragging
breathing.
something heavy, and it sounds like it's in plastic.
Yeah. I mean, okay, heavy breathing, maybe, but I heard. I'm sorry, maybe because of what we're doing here, but I heard like somebody dragging a body. Okay.
That's exactly what it sounded like. Not just a body, but a body in plastic.
Yeah, exactly.
This is getting fun.
Weird thing that I always tell people that I'm a sound investigator, and I don't mean sound as in I make sense. I mean sound as in if I hear something, it doesn't matter how far away, I can nail down exactly what it is, who's doing it, how tall they are. I mean, my kids like to play these games with me. Like they'll go in another room and make a noise with something, and I'll tell them exactly what it was and who touched it. And they're like, "How do you do that?" And that was a body being dragged in plastic.
I think so. All right, these next three, I don't have a clue. Okay, I just titled them unknown. So let's see what y'all think.
You can hear people talking at the end.
It sounds like a TV channel that's out of, like, that's fuzzy.
I forgot to put the caveat at the beginning of all this. Sometimes you will hear voices, and that's because of my workplace, because I wasn't recording directly from the phone. From the telephone. I just picked up my cell phone, put the desk phone on speaker, and just recorded a video on my phone. So I can't say that those voices were part of the phone call because I know there were other people in the big room I was in.
It sounded to me like the black and white fuzzy TV.
Yeah. And when I listened that time, I heard it sounded like machinery in the background. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's try the next one.
garbage disposal.
Hmm.
It sounded like a bike that had one of those playing cards in the spokes, and then
Yeah.
ran into a trash can.
Well, that time it sounded to me like the spirit box.
Yes.
They're clicking through the radio frequencies.
Yes.
In a ghost hunt. That one kind of could be. Christine, what'd you hear?
To me, it sounded more like a ghost box than anything else.
Yeah, I had not thought about it till just then when I was listening. Okay, here's the last one. I still don't get it.
To me, it sounded kind of like
that
somebody
for
moving a
Andrea.
chair,
Andrea always has this look.
I can hear that.
Yeah,
and then somebody walking or playing with something.
yeah. All right, we're gonna start winding it down here. Before we do, remember we are sponsored by FrankLovesBooks.com. Hang on, I want to play the little ad again real quick. And then we'll close out the show with our observations. All right, we are sponsored by Frank Loves Books. So just wait, Christine, until I do something for you and your books.
That was amazing. I can't wait.
That was a lot of fun. We'll be posting that in our Frank Loves Books group later. So we want everybody to go to franklovesbooks.com and check it out. All right, as we close out today, any final thoughts? I put a few suggestions there in our outline as to what could it be. We talked about mine. There's a possibility they could be prank calls, but these were spread out over months, from different phone numbers. Maybe it was a spoof card. I don't know, but somebody, if they did, are putting a lot of time and effort into nothing. It's just weird. I don't know. Or
Well, I'll keep my phone sitting on the toilet, and I'll let you know.
well, my other thought was, before I even saw Beth's video, was maybe a live EVP. People get these phone calls. Beth was, doing a session, trying to get some EVPs, trying to communicate, and her phone rings.
That's creepy. That's very interesting how that worked for her.
Yeah, that is.
I wonder.
I like it.
I wonder if 5G will add any layers to this.
Maybe she will. Next time she's on.
The new 5G, maybe it'll enhance our EVPs.
Well, if you believe the conspiracy theories about 5G, who knows?